Welcome in to the Pay Dirt Profile Podcast. This is Dante.
Tony.
Kyle.
Jamar.
He quarantined over there.
I know, we're out of order now.
So the three of us are here. Jamar is recording from his house. We're trying to do this call-in thing, so hopefully the audio works really nicely. But if not, our bad. So before we get started, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the listener questions. We're profiling those today. But we want to just remind everybody you can find us wherever your podcasts are held, as well as all of our social medias at the Pay Dirt Profile and the group on Facebook, the Pay Dirt Profile Podcast. The group has been really great. It's increased in members daily. We're up to 151 members now. We have a lot of different people coming in, chiming in with different questions and different posts, and we are hoping it just continues to get bigger. I mean, we want people to send their mock drafts and send their player profiles themselves and talk to other people in the group and speculate and things of that nature. So this has been really great so far. We've been having a great time doing this, so we hope that we continue to talk to people. I think the whole point was for us to hang out and have a good time, and for other people to feel like they were kind of in the room with us. So if you hear us cracking a cold one or making jokes or anything like that, so we're hoping people want to join in. So what are you drinking over there?
In this society, my friend Teddy, he's one of the director of operations for this spot out in Curry Mesa. We'll get you to society.
Stuff's good.
Hey, he got to pay us for the ad spot. All right. Well, before we get started, oh dang, Harper.
My beer's here.
Before we get started, we got UFC. Dana White bought a big ol' island to try to set up all the fights for, to try to in the midst of coronavirus, having us be able to still watch these UFC fights. Tony brought up something kind of interesting to us the other day regarding football trying to do the same.
Dude, first, Dana White is an insane person. To think, to have the idea of, hey, how do I capitalize on this? Well, I'm going to just get an island that I can bring tested people to who are proven to not have the virus, and only those people are going to be flown on private jets out to this island to have fights and be the only sport on television. You are going to make a killing.
It's smart.
So props to that dude if he can figure all that out. And then there's even talks of he's figuring it out where the island isn't going to be part of the U.S. or something like that, so he can fly all the international fighters in, because right now there's the travel ban that people can't come into the United States.
Right.
But if this island isn't part of that, then he can fly all the international fighters in too.
That makes sense.
Is crazy. But I mean, there was an absurd article on Pro Football Talk 2 weeks ago or something that was saying that the NFL is going to try and do this. And there's potential, they were speculating that if it continues, the only way the NFL would just erect some basic stadiums or football fields and bring all the teams, all the personnels, all the everything to this remote location, not let anybody out, not let anybody in, test everybody on the way in, and that's how we were going to have a football season.
That's crazy. That's so many people in one place.
Yeah.
And fighters makes a lot of sense.
Only a couple.
There's you're going to bring 10, 12 fighters to an event with their small crew and their training camp or whatever it is, in and out one weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You have this football team on an island with 30 other teams. That's a lot of dudes, a lot of different stuff you've got to take care of. Or you're going to fly them out, 32 teams out every week.
Well, and there's no way to do schedule either,
Right.
if because the idea is that they would all live there. They would every team,
Right.
every player, every person would live in this compound for the entire football season, and that's the way it would happen, and that's the only way it would happen. If you let them go home, there's no way these players aren't going to go out to a bar or go out to eat or even go get groceries. Like, that's it. I mean, it seems asinine, but man, it'd be crazy if it happened.
Think about this. So clearly, I mean, they might have 2 different fields, right? They can't get a ton of different fields. 2,
maybe
field,
3,
3, 4. Like, the field's a field, but like NFL playing conditions going to be tough. What if like the NFC West played on one day of the week with like another division? We have football every day.
That I was gonna say that's how you have to do it.
Right. So like, say the NFC AFC West plays Mondays, or whatever it is. You could figure it out a week, and then you'd have to reset when they're playing cross games. Mm-hmm. But like, you figure out your pod for 4 weeks. You're playing every Tuesday or Thursday, whatever it is. That'd be wild. Ruin red zone. Yeah. But
I mean, or makes it better. You just have red zone every day.
Yeah, every day.
Because there's going to be well, I guess if there's limited fields, there's probably not multiple games going on. But I mean, it makes a lot of sense for the UFC because, like you said, it's just a smaller process. But for football, I just don't see how it would happen. But I mean, there's a lot of land in Nebraska, and like I'm sure there's. One of these owners probably owns 10,000 acres in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, that you could pop up some fields real quick and build 7 or 8 football fields out there.
So I think what you would have to do if you were going to actually try to do this is, like you had said, try to bring in everybody, make sure they're all tested, make sure all stay there. You have to figure out some way to get room and board, which would be astronomical.
It'd be crazy.
It'd be absolutely insane. But if you were to hypothetically be able to figure that one out, you have to take into account there's 16 games a week for the first 4 weeks, and then each, there's buys and whatnot. But if you're talking about 16 games a week, all those games are like 3 hours each. So, I mean, I don't know how you play those on 7 days. I mean, you probably have to play like 3 games a day until you get to the point where you don't have to play 3 games. And then, I mean, at that point, like, what personnel? You have to bring out more personnel because, I mean, you can't have all of those ref crews reffing multiple games at once. I mean, it would be a very, very tough thing to try to do.
Well, you probably get everything would have to be really exact.
Yeah, really regimented. It would probably be the biggest endeavor we've ever seen. And NFL can't get CBAs right, so there's no way that they're getting this thing right.
Yeah, of the major leagues, like baseball, they could do it because they have 2 spots already. Mm-hmm. In like Arizona, Florida, they could kind of play at their own facilities and kind of figure it out. Basketball talked about potting the Western and the Eastern Conference.
Right.
Football,
and they're indoors.
You would have to. There's so many people involved.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 10 people in a basketball team. Or 12.
Right.
14. It's 50 something plus coaches plus training personnel, and taking care of that would be really tough.
Well, and you're still gonna need all the PR. You're still gonna need all the media people associated with every team, all the training staff. Yeah. That's what I sent it to my wife as a joke. Like, hey, I guess I'm just gonna disappear for the entire like, I know I'm already gone for football season, but this time I'm really gonna be gone for the entire time.
I can't leave. I'm quarantined. Sorry.
Good luck.
See you in 5.5 months. So, I mean, I guess we'll segue into our listener questions. Like I said before, like, it's super cool that people were in all of our mentions, on all the posts, having different discussions. So what we'll start out with first is Xavier L. He asked, is Washington State quarterback Anthony Gordon the real deal or a product of the system? We had a player profile on Anthony Gordon, actually, so we talked a little bit about that. But Kyle, do you want to hit that one or get started with that one?
Yeah, I can jump off with that. I know we talked about it in a previous pod where we talked about quarterback prospects specifically. I think when you look just from the outside, he's going to be a system, product of the system type of guy. And then, you watch him play, a lot of what he's doing, play in, play out is what he's asked to do.
Right.
So when it becomes really hard to evaluate. I guess we didn't find any junior college film of him. Maybe we could have dug deeper and found some, but I'm not really intrigued in watching.
Not about that life.
Yeah, junior college tape. Either way, so maybe he was doing some different stuff, but from what I saw, I do think he is a system guy who will take multiple years to get ready to play in the NFL.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. He has a very strong, quick release, a strong enough arm, enough accuracy, not super mobile, but can get around in the pocket. Is a tough kind of player. He didn't really seem to back down too much. Decision making was adequate. He struggled a little bit with, anticipating throwing windows, and he played in a system that's not super translatable. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he can be successful, but it's going to be very specific. I think on the pod we said, a team like the Eagles would be a great area for him to go and kind of learn. A team like the Chiefs or the Saints that are going to use a lot of different personnel groupings, are going to spread the field, horizontally and vertically, and let him use his talents and whatnot, and also be in a spot where he has to sit because there's a established starter there. Anything from you, Tony?
Not at all. I like his name. It's my name.
We all, except for you, Dante. Middle name, Jamar's middle name, Anthony.
I didn't know your middle name was Anthony Jamar. Nice.
Yeah, we out here.
So we learn new things every day.
We got a club over here.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, I'm not a part of it. Got to leave the pod. All right. Question 2. I know you're a Raider or a Charger fan, but this one's for you, Jamar. Our friendship was about to be over.
Well, if you're a Raider fan, can we go to Vegas every weekend for games? I'll be a Raider fan.
Yeah, you don't need an excuse to go to Vegas. All right. This one was also from Xavier. So, Derek Carr capable of playing winning football with the Raiders?
Xay.
Unbiased opinion. Unbiased opinion.
Unbiased opinion. I mean, I'm unbiased. It's the Raiders. I'm trying to think back at Derek Carr and kind of see, has Derek Carr ever had real competition for his spot at the QB's position? I mean,
not really.
Not really, right? So
not real competition.
Right. So I'm thinking, is he capable of winning with the Raiders? I think so. I think if they can put the right pieces around him, it's possible he's capable of winning with the Raiders. I think that having another quarterback that can really easily take your position, hopefully put some fire under him, and he starts playing the way NFL quarterback should be playing. So I'm excited to see that QB battle and see how that plays itself out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think his biggest issue is, number one, has been health. Number 2 has been, the players around him, because when he was at his peak, he had, Amari Cooper playing at a high level, Michael Crabtree playing at a high level, O-line was playing at a high level. And then the third one was like Jamar kind of insinuated, he never really had anybody, sitting behind him, kind of pushing him. So he kind of became like a check down Charlie a little bit and didn't really want to take too many chances. Now, if he's playing that same brand of football in 2020, there's somebody there who I don't think Mariota is a guy who's going to take a lot of chances. But, you do have somebody there that if you aren't playing up to par, that you might be looking over your shoulder. So maybe he does take some more chances, try to make a few more plays than he otherwise would have. And maybe we see a different side of him this season.
I think my take on it is more of a follow-up question to all of it is, do you think John Gruden wants Derek Carr to win? Like, that's kind of where my standpoint is like, does John Gruden believe in Derek Carr? There's all the talk and speculation, how he wanted him out, how he wanted Brady. Like, yeah, I mean, Brady is a better quarterback, and you're trying to win, and, Marcus Mariota is decent quarterback, and he's on the free market, so you might as well bring him in. He's a former starter. Like, it's a great backup situation versus Mike Glennon or whoever was the backup last year. Like, it's a better option for sure. I mean, my kind of take is does John Gruden want Derek Carr to win? Obviously, John Gruden himself wants to win. It's just a question of if he even wants Derek Carr to be that guy.
Right.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about before, and I guess I bashed the Gruden brothers. Gruden made a lot of headway being the Monday Night Football guy, the quarterback camp guy, and you look back at his history as a quarterback coach, head coach for quarterback, has not been great.
Right.
Derek Carr, I just pulled up some stats for him. A losing record in his career. But you look at his early trajectory, he went, they were bad 3-13, 7-9, and then he was 12-3 as a starter, his third season. And I go, well, okay, I didn't really realize that.
That was with Del Rio, right?
It was with Del Rio. So was it like they had a good running game, right? Their defense was all right. He had some pieces, but he was not asked to do everything.
Right.
And so I think if they gave him some help, he could be the guy. But like you said, does Gruden want him to be the guy? Or are they trying to move on to the next guy and push it down the road and see if they can find someone who they think they can be really good? And even looking at his stats last year, 4,000 yards passing, they went 7-9, 21 touchdowns, 8 picks. As a career, he's a 2-1 guy. I mean, he's actually better than 2-1. I think he can win. He seems more comfortable a couple years in now. I would really like to see the Raiders, give him another shot. You're always going to have Mariota kind of waiting in the wings to take that over. But if you don't actually give him the shot, like if the decision's already made, then we can't actually evaluate any of that. Like if he comes out and he's asked for 12 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it's going to be, flip it and play Mariota, draft a guy, whatever.
So I think we all are in agreement that he can be successful if he has the right things around him. Real quick, let's go around. What does he have to have around him? What does he need? What does he need to be successful? So, like for me, they have number 12? I think they need CeeDee Lamb. I think they need a guy, because as much as I think Jerry Jeudy's a great route runner, a great player, they need CeeDee Lamb as a guy who can win 50-50 balls, who can win down the field, who can win on all three levels, make catches, run after the catch. You have Hunter Renfrow, who can win in the slot. Tyrell Williams to go, vertical as your traditional X, and then Darren Waller and all the other tight ends and, the walking corpse of Jason Witten. And then the strong running game. So,
right. I mean, I absolutely agree. CeeDee Lamb's got to be the guy.
Yeah.
Right. Unless they figure out a way to, get Bill O'Brien to give them Luke Hopkins. But so you go and you get CeeDee Lamb, like you said, they have a lot of tight end slot guys, which, that's fine. But you need a guy who could be the guy.
Right.
Right. And he would fill in and be the number one right away. Right. He would probably struggle a little bit in the league, but he's a premier athlete and a extremely talented receiver, arguably number one in the draft at receiver, 1 or 2, unless you're Chris Sims, right? So you go and you pick him, and then they continue to run the ball well, which with Josh Jacobs, they did a really good job. Sometimes they didn't commit as much as they should have, but if they continue to do that, I think that's how he becomes successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think a wide receiver is something that they need. They made a lot of, their first number 4 overall last year was defensive end. Then they got Josh Jacobs. Then at 27, they got Jonathan Abram. Then their second round pick, they got another cornerback. Like, they've made some big young moves on the young defensive players, and I think they just need some more help in the offensive side to help them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and think about it too. The way Josh Jacobs ran, ask the two football experts, but that offensive line didn't seem awful.
No.
So it doesn't seem like they need a piece to fill in there to give him more comfort in the pocket or anything. He just needs someone to throw to.
Right. All right. So we have another one from Carl B. Any of our thoughts on the 2010s all-decade roster? And if we thought that there were any snubs. So I'm assuming that there's some people that he's looking at. Know that he's a Colts fan, so I'm gonna see if there's any notable Colts names missing here. But you go down the list. You start on offense. You have Tom Brady, quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, quarterback. You have Frank Gore, running back. Marshawn Lynch, LaShawn McCoy, Adrian Peterson, your 4 running backs. Receiver, Antonio Brown, Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones. Flex, the record skip, Darren Sproles. We'll come back to that. Tight end, Rob Gronkowski. Tight end, Travis Kelce. Offensive tackles, Jason Peters, Tyron Smith, Joe Staley, Joe Thomas. It's a really solid group. Offensive guards, Jari Evans, Logan Mankins, Zach Martin, Marshall Yonda, another really strong group. Alex Mack and Marquise Pouncey. Not sure how I feel about Marquise Pouncey. Defense. We have defensive ends, Calais Campbell, Cameron Jordan, Julius Peppers, J.J. Watt. Defensive tackles, Geno Atkins, Fletcher Cox, Aaron Donald, and Ndamukong Suh. Linebackers, Chandler Jones is more of an edge rusher. Luke Kuechly, Khalil Mack, Von Miller, who's also an edge rusher, Bobby Wagner, and Patrick Willis. Cornerbacks were Patrick Peterson, Darrell Revis, Richard Sherman. Safeties were Eric Berry, Earl Thomas, and Eric Weddle. Then there's a specific DB group for more of your hybrids and slot corners. Chris Harris Jr., Tyrann Mathieu. Then you had your specialists, Johnny Hecker, Shane Leckler, Steven Gotskowski, or those were both punters. Steven Gotskowski and Justin Tucker were your kickers. Yeah, that's Jamar's boy, Gostkowski. Punt return, we had Tyreek Hill. Punt return 2, we had Darren Sproles. Kick-off return, we had Devin Hester. And then we had Cordell Patterson as a second kickoff returner. And then lastly, we had coaches Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. Let's start on offense. Any glaring things that were out of the ordinary for any of you guys?
What the fuck is Darren Sproles doing twice on an all-decade team?
Hey, that guy
Not once, twice.
That guy got me a lot of fantasy points. So
For what season?
Tell me what season. He had one season which he had 1,000 total yards.
You probably played him. You probably played him another season when they had him on the franchise tag for the Chargers, and he had like 1 or 2 really big runs, and they were like, "This guy's gonna be a franchise running back." And he's on somebody else's team now. That's why. One
season with 1,000 total yards. One season with 10 total touchdowns. Not the same season.
And I think people have to realize that when you're talking about offense, this is not a scrimmage yards thing. Like, if he wanted to be in the specialist position, I don't really think we would have a problem with.
No, like punt return. Yeah. Like I go, well, what is he doing on here?
Yeah.
So I went through his stats and I was like, I got to go through the All-Pro teams. And then, like, punt return, there's just not really enough of consistently, good players year to year, because you're hoping good players are not punt returning every season.
Right.
Tyreek Hill had a good season. Patrick Peterson had one really good season as a punt returner. They took him off. there's a lot of guys out there who just had, a season or two and are off.
Right.
So, I'll give you the one. At what point in the history of football, if we're going to talk about the last 10 years of football, do we have to mention Darren Sproles?
Nah.
Nope.
D-Spreezy.
Yeah, he was cool. Little man.
Jamar, he was barely on your team in the 2010s.
Yeah, okay, little man, he got some yards. He was running around scared.
He was an interesting player.
All these other players at least make sense, right? Darren Sproles? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I think that starting at the top, we're looking at Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Those are two big ones.
I'm not even sold that Aaron Rodgers should be on this.
What do we think about Drew Brees?
Well, that's just
I looked up because that was my thought, is that Drew Brees should be in there. But you look, there's a website you can compare year-to-year stats for the last 10 years, and Rodgers outperformed Drew Brees in everything except for yards, or almost everything except for yards. Aaron Rodgers has more playoff wins. They're the same amount of Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers has won more games, has won more playoff games, has had, thus less losses, has a higher completion percentage, has less interceptions. Mm-hmm. So you look at strictly numbers, and you're like, everything except for yards.
So do you think that instead of talking about the Darren Sproles, why are you here, and finding another place to fit, another player to fit there, because I'm sure we can find another running back or receiver, wouldn't it have just been fair to not put a flex on there and just put Drew Brees?
Or put a fifth receiver?
Yeah, I think they did a pretty fair job when it comes to the amount of players at each position. You can't have lists super long, but yeah, I think you could have found any running back or receiver that was more impactful in this decade than Darren Sproles was. On offense. If you had a choice to be do I want AJ Green on offense or Darren Sproles? It's not even a question.
You just start looking through, you can look at some of the 2010 stats.
Yeah.
Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
At the end, he wasn't even playing, but him, Demaryius Thomas, AJ Green,
Des Bryant,
Jimmy Graham, Des Bryant.
Jimmy Graham is somebody you can talk about over Travis Kelce, and I love Travis Kelce.
I had that thought too.
Yeah, because Travis Kelce,
that's a recency thing.
Yeah, he's been very, very great over the last 5 years. But and I'm not a huge Jimmy Graham fan either, because he hasn't been good over the last 5 years. But for a small stretch of time, it was Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham. Jason Witten was there based on purely on consistency, and then almost everybody else. Right. And Jason Witten could have been on here. Jason Witten has the third most catches in NFL history or something.
Right, he's
that.
That next tier down probably for a decade team. And Greg Olsen, they were both very solid, but no one ever said, man, that guy's the best player at his position in the league.
Right.
And you look at a lot of these positions, especially on offense, just the skill positions. Well, it is kind of all these guys played all 10 years or most of the years, which I think, when you're doing counting stats, does add up.
Right.
That's kind of my point with or you could make a point with Travis Kelce versus Jason Witten is Kelce came in the league 2014, 2015, something like that.
14 was his first season. So 15 was his breakout year.
Yeah, so 15 was his first year that he was relevant. So he's only been there for half the decade. Mm-hmm. Does being there for 5 more years, your numbers were less, you were less impactful for a Jason Witten argument, but you were there the entire time. That's got to have some weight.
I think it's impossible to make the era-to-era comparison, but I think what you have to do is you have to take a look at, if you weren't playing at your most high end for the entirety of that decade, you have to figure out why was it that you had, a strong, 4 or 5 year stretch. So for Adrian Peterson, he was good the entire decade. He's in no matter what. Frank Gore, as much as he's not upper echelon, he was consistent. He was in there entire decade.
It's just too, he's one guy's
I mean,
he played a lot. He played a lot, but like, I never looked at Frank Gore and said, "Man, he's the best running back in the league."
But I think if you look back, because 10 years ago, like if you look back at 2010 to like 2014, Frank Gore was like number 5 in the league at running back.
He was always like very good,
right?
But no one ever said, "Man, that guy, he is super good."
Right?
Like he should be the number 1 running back, paid the most.
Yeah.
We should hold him in the highest regard. Like he's a grinder, 4 yards a carry.
Right. And but that's the thing. He benefits for being there the whole time. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason Jimmy Graham is not on here or Jason Witten's not on here because they played very well in the decade before this, played great for 4 years of this decade. In the last 6, they still played, but they weren't anywhere near as productive.
Right.
And Travis Kelce gets the benefit of the doubt because he wasn't even there.
Right.
All we've seen of him is 1 year where he was a rookie and figuring it out, and then was basically one of the top 3 tight ends, in the league for the most part since he's been in. So it's really like an interesting type of debate. Do you guys have any defensive snubs? Anybody?
Before we go. There's some unanimous guys on here: Tom Brady, Adrian Peterson, some linemen,
Aaron Donald,
JJ Watt. All those guys are warranted. How was Julio Jones not unanimous?
Because there's people out there tripping.
Let me just pull up some Julio Jones stats.
He had 5 straight years of 1,400 yards receiving.
Yeah, he has. Let's see the actual stats here.
I'll let you talk.
All his career has been in this decade.
Yeah,
his whole career, 2010 and beyond.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson was the best when he came in, right?
Yep.
And I don't.
Megatron.
Oh man, it's so impressive that he barely even played like half of the decade.
Right.
It's still on here.
Wait. Before you continue, why is Megatron not unanimous?
He just didn't play enough. I don't think.
He didn't play long enough.
But he was so good.
I don't think you gotta play long enough.
No,
Your name
I
is
know.
Megatron.
I know.
But you could see the argument. If you were voting on it, but I mean, he's by far.
Yeah, it's the argument I just made for Jason Witten.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like Julio Jones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000-yard seasons, 1 shortened by injury, 1 959 yards. That's his whole career. The leading yards per game receiver in the history of the NFL. He's done it for
history, and it's by like 9 yards or so. The next closest person,
like
is
I get it.
down
Maybe you docked him for touchdowns.
Tis not.
Maybe you docked him for his touchdown production, but that's not all in him. He's been the most consistent, best receiver over the 10-year stretch. Like he's got to be unanimous.
Kyle said it, not me.
It's crazy. We can go to the defense now, but that's just my thought. He's been the best. He still is the best in the league.
Defense seemed pretty fair. I double took a little bit with Eric Weddle. I'm not. I just said I double took a little bit. Go ahead, Jamar. Why does Eric Weddle deserve to be in here?
So Eric Weddle doesn't deserve to be on this list.
I didn't say he doesn't. I said I double took a little bit.
He's very close to not being.
But like I'm more on Jamar's side here. So he played the whole decade.
Yep.
And was very good.
Yeah, he was.
But
he was a really good player.
I don't like maybe 1 or 2 years. Like he was like one of the best safeties in the league
For sure.
He's been a very solid safety the whole time.
Right.
So it's like I like I said, I went through some all pro stuff and like there's not really enough people in there to say this person should be here or not.
Right.
I would have, if I was going to talk about DBs, I would have more issue with like the DB category, the hybrid category, than the safety category. Because Eric Berry, Earl Thomas, those are no-brainers.
Right.
The best players in the league for like a 5-6 year stretch, easily.
And I think you had a little bit of issue with Chris Harris Jr. being on there.
Yeah, I look back, like no one's ever talking about Chris Harris being the best in the league.
Yeah.
And like he's been very solid. And Tyrann Mathieu too. He had a couple very good years. And the one of the years he probably should have won Defensive Player of the Year. He got hurt midway through it and kind of ruined the Cardinals' chance. But like he got cut a couple times. Money or not, he got cut a couple times. He was not great. He didn't play the whole time. I mean, I don't know who you would fill in there for Chris Harris Jr., but like at least Josh Norman was locking people down for 5 straight years.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I know he hasn't been great. He didn't age well, but like I think
I would still put Weddle in over Josh Norman. I think and like I said, I just double took a little bit. I think he deserves to be on the list because when you think safeties, you have to go in and be like, if you're not on there and I feel some type of way, I have to think who has to go on there instead of you. And I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who should go in there.
You could probably start searching through Pro Bowl stuff and find someone.
Right. But if I have to do that, then you shouldn't be on the all-decade team. Right. Like, if I got to search for you, then, like, Eric Weddle has a spot
also,
there,
like...
So.
What about the missing person from the Legion of Boom, Cam Chancellor?
But did he play? How long did he play too? I mean,
it was I think maybe a time. Like I looked at Chris Harris's career. It's in this decade, 2010 to now. Yeah. He played the whole time. Been a very solid player, and maybe you just can't overlook some of those, stats. I thought maybe Aqib Talib.
That's a pretty good one.
Like if you're going to say people, that's the one person like Aqib Talib over him. I know he's not a DB playing. But he did play some slot corner, which is basically what they're saying here. Like, Aqib Talib was locking people down. You might have considered him the best corner in the league for a couple-year stretch. At least in an argument.
That is a good one. Because
Tampa to New England, and then his first year in L.A., I mean, there was not many players better than him.
Yeah. I mean, getting the pick sixes, being always willing to tackle, always willing to take the number one assignment. That's a pretty good one right there. I think lastly for me, I'm going to leave the specialists alone. I think I'm not a huge proponent of kickoff and punt returns. Tyreek Hill has been in the league for 3 seasons.
And he returned punts for 1.
He returned punts for 1 season. I mean, he's dynamic, but if you wanted to put somebody else there, punt return, I think that's fair.
There's just not enough people with enough returns.
Exactly. Kickoff return is different now, and
Devin Hester and Cordell Patterson, really, those were both before that kickoff thing came in.
Right.
Sproles, if you look at his punt return stats, you could give it to him because he scored, I think it was 5 touchdowns over the 10-year span as a punt returner.
Right.
But he hadn't returned punts in 6 seasons.
Right.
So it's just, those are weird. I can give all those away. I don't care.
Yeah.
But, get out. You're not an offensive all-decade player.
So I don't think that they did anything wrong with the coaches. I think that they got the coaches, hit the nail on the head. But, I would have liked to see them add 2 more and put in Reed and Sean Payton. I don't think any 2 coaches have meant more to their franchises outside of the 2 that they named. They've been models of consistency outside of Andy Reid firing season, as stalwarts in the playoffs. Sean Payton,
they got to get to the, Tony said, I wasn't sold on Aaron Rodgers before. That's a good debate.
Yeah.
But, coach, you got to make the playoffs.
Right.
At least Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Half of those seasons, the Saints were in the playoffs.
That's true.
And he didn't, that's kind of your job.
Yeah.
Right? Drew Brees, you throw some stats up. Maybe your team is not that good.
Yeah.
And, I'm not the, I've already said on here, I'm not the biggest Drew Brees fan either way. But, you could put a debate up for that. I don't think Sean Payton should be on there. Right. I would definitely say Andy Reid before him. But there was seasons they weren't getting anything done either. So I'm okay with 2.
Yeah. So, all right, I got a question for you, Tony. So, we have our top 3 receivers and top 3 running backs who are highly valued but could underperform in 2020. And you can take NFL perspective or you can take fantasy football perspective. But, a couple of receivers and a couple of running backs who you think are going to underperform this season.
I would start with somebody else.
All right, Jamar, you got a couple you think top 3 running backs, receivers, underperformers. It doesn't have to be 3. If you got 1 or 2.
Underperformers. Just looking at this list. I don't see Nick Chubb doing the same thing he did last year. I feel like eventually they're going to work Kareem Hunt into this show. With that being said, they'll take some yards from that man.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see him being, at least from a fantasy standpoint, him being as valuable as he was last year. But that's just
right. It's a good one.
Look at this list. Ugh. Chris Carson's coming off an injury, right?
Yeah.
From last year, Chris Carson's another one. He's still pretty high on this list, but seeing how he's going to bounce back next year. I almost want to say Dalvin too. I really like Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook had a great year. Prior to getting hurt. I feel like he's such a big question mark that it's like he could drop off as well. So
yeah,
those are my 3.
Okay. Kyle, you got a couple of receivers or running backs you think might fall back a little bit?
Yeah, if you're gonna look at a fantasy perspective, which I think, you could do anything, but so for me, I think that Derrick Henry playoff shine is going to come off a little bit. It's going to be very hard to accumulate touches and stats like that for a whole season. So I think you're probably going to see him overdrafted a lot. As a top 5 running back when he should probably be top 10. Because he does have a good role. But so I think that's probably one. Austin Eckler.
Big one.
As more of a fantasy, I think he's going to continue the same role. But
Yes.
You're probably going to see him overdrafted and overvalued, and he's going to underperform. He's probably still going to have a very good fantasy value, but where you get him is probably going to be too high.
Yeah, he's going in the second round in early drafts, and it's no disrespect to him, but to try to have the efficiency that he had, it's the same reason that Alvin Kamara was not quite as great as he was. He finished as a top 12 guy, but because you have otherworldly efficiency, that goes down to earth, and you just become, instead of upper echelon, historic, you become a quality football player.
Right. And the third running back I'll say is McCaffrey. As big a McCaffrey fan as there is, I just don't think that, one, they're going to give him as many touches. Mm-hmm. Right, so I think Matt Rule understands that he's a team builder here, so he's going to be able to build this team for the future. In the future, shouldn't rely on giving Christian McCaffrey, in a season when you're not going to be good, 400 touches.
Right.
So you're going to see his touches cut back, and they're probably going to utilize some more running back touches that way. So he's going to be the number 1 running back drafted. And I guess a fall-off would be not ending up as the number 1 fantasy running back.
Which hasn't happened in
See, it just
years,
doesn't
since
happen,
LaDainian Tomlinson or something like that. That somebody started and finished number 1. The couple that I had was number 1, Leonard Fournette. He had a really great season. He had a pretty typical rushing season. He broke 1,000 yards. Only had 3 touchdowns, which was really, really weird, being a guy who was like more of a pounder. So I think he should see
that
positive.
Offense is screwed up.
Yeah,
they don't do a good job of getting him the ball in those situations.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he should see positive regression, but who knows? Like you said, it's not ideal. I'm pretty sure Jay Gruden is the offensive coordinator there now, and he had 76 catches last year. Like, it was a career high, and Jay Gruden has always used a pass catching running back, as a second back. So I don't see the path to him having that same, high touch floor that he had this past year. So unless his touchdowns, dramatically increase, like I think there's a natural way back. I think Nick Chubb was a good one on your part. The one caveat I do think is that as much as Kareem Hunt might be used more, he had a lot of slot touches last year, and without having, and clearly they have Hooper now, and they're gonna run more 2 tight end sets, but I don't know how much that he eats into his production. So there may be a chance that maybe he can escape it if he can, score a few more touchdowns. But on the receiver side, I think we have to assume DeAndre Hopkins is going to take a little bit of a step back. You're not an offense that's gonna throw to you, directly quite as much. Yeah. But they will throw the ball more, so you might see more than your previous offense. So you might see him still be able to have a big season. And then I also think that a guy like Devontae Parker, he's gonna fall back right now. He's going in like the 3rd round of some drafts, 4th round of some draft, and Kyle knows why.
Your boy Preston
Williams is coming back off of ACL surgery, and Preston Williams is the real deal. He's kind of the real deal. I personally like him. I personally like his game. But I'm assuming that if you look back at their years last year, Preston Williams worked his way into, as a undrafted rookie, being the number 1 guy, and it wasn't by a large margin, but they were basically splitting numbers down the road. And as soon as he got injured is when Devontae Parker really just took off. So I'm not even coming back and saying that Preston Williams is going to have this amazing season, but his mere presence is going to mean Fitzpatrick is not just going to feed Parker the ball every single time. They're going to be able to spread it out a little bit,
steal some touches.
Yeah, so I don't think it is likely that you're going to see a guy like that. If you see him in your drafts and he's going in the 3rd or 4th round, like, I would be very, very wary
about doing that. That's a half a season's worth of production.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on? And I know it's kind of crazy and far-fetched because he's the best receiver in the league. What are your thoughts on Michael Thomas?
No, he's not the best receiver in the league. That's where you're mistaken.
He's the best fantasy.
He has the most catches in the league.
He's a fantasy player in the league.
That's
fantasy receiver in the league.
Yeah.
Looking at the stats, that's one person. Probably where you're going with this is Emmanuel Sanders is coming to town, and he's going to steal some of those slot kind of underneath touches. 2, I think they're just going to run the ball more. When they're better when they just run the ball.
They always have been.
Yeah.
Always have been.
They just don't want to.
So I think that's a good point, Jamar. I think, and Kyle, I think that, with Emmanuel Sanders there, you're looking at, a guy who's going to get touches in a similar part of the field. Not so much that, like, Thomas is not still going to get his targets, but if Emmanuel Sanders is commanding slot targets, and you have Cook going down the seam, like, it only makes sense that you're going to see more Michael Thomas out wide, and if you're out wide, it makes it easier to double team you. I think he still sees his targets, but I think that's a pretty good point. That you might see a less efficiency. You might see, he's never been a super high touchdown scorer. He's scored a little bit more, per year than Julio Jones, but I don't think he's even gotten to double digits once in his career yet. So that might continue to be the same trend. If you look at fewer catches and fewer yards, the only place you can really go from a historic best season in the NFL history as far as catches go is down. So I think that's a good one. Got a couple?
Yeah, Cortland Sutton in Denver.
That's a good one.
He performed really well at the beginning of the year before Drew Lock took over, and then had I looked it up, had like a 10-yard per game drop after Drew Lock took over.
That's big.
Yeah, he went from like a 63 yards per game average down to 52, which is a big deal. And now you got Drew Lock there the whole whole time. And I mean, he's a big name in Denver. He's a top wide receiver for him, so could be easily overdrafted as just lack of production. And then before Kyle said it, I was going to bring up Alvin Kamara, but I mean, he didn't exactly perform exceptionally well last year. Like, he did really well. He was a great fantasy running back.
Hurt.
Yeah,
right.
But they got Sanders, they got Michael Thomas. They love to throw the ball. Could be an easily kind of overdrafted running back.
Yeah,
I could see that too. I think that he falls into a very peculiar kind of spot where he could be a value in your draft, or you might be, like you said, he might be overdrafted a little bit. I think it just is going to depend on what's going to happen with these training camps. Can they actually get in, get some time practicing? Is he going to be completely healthy? And if so, are they going to be able to do preseason? And what is he going to look like? If he looks really great and they utilize him a lot, then people are going to be like, oh, this is the Kamara of old. And I think that you might be right that what we saw last year might just be an unhealthy version of what is the norm. He was otherworldly as far as efficiency, as far as scoring like 17, 18 touchdowns and, all of the rushing and receiving yards and, receptions he was able to put up. What we saw last year might just be what we should expect from him. And if they're going to take that as like the number 12 guy overall or number 13 guy overall, then like that's fair. There's a little bit of upside there. But if you take him number 2 or 3 or 4, you might be a little bit more disappointed than that.
He's still a big name. He still has a dynamic quarterback. People still love having him on their team because of the potential upside, especially in a PPR league. You can, you're going to get a lot of points for the reception, out of the backfield. Could very easily see the justification of drafting him higher, but there's potential of him being performing the same as last year.
Yeah. All right, this one's for you, Kyle. Who's the best pound-for-pound player in the NFL draft? This question is from Matthew G. And actually, the last question, the wide receiver one, was from Peter T. I didn't want to leave him out. So this one from Matthew, best pound-for-pound player in the NFL draft. And then, are there any potential draft steals?
So, I mean, if you just want to, like, pound for pound is kind of a weird thing because, like, you are what you are at some point. But, like, I think the best overall player in the draft.
Gotta guess appearance real quick.
She, like, dived out. She's like, oh, don't put me in the video. Hey, Jules. Jamar's wife. Guest appearance.
So, I think that the best player, and it's not going to be the first overall pick, but he's going to be the best. He's the most dynamic player, Isaiah Simmons.
Whoa.
What do you mean, whoa?
Whoa.
What do you mean, whoa?
Isaiah Simmons. Hey, I like Isaiah Simmons, so I'm surprised you said that. Continue.
The guy is a freak.
Yes.
So let me just bring up some combine stats here. 6'4", 240, 4.39 40, 40-inch vert. Other stats aren't there. The guy plays free safety, strong safety, linebacker,
edge rusher.
He could do it all. So in terms of like just what you're gonna get as a value, he's going to be a guy like Jamal Adams in terms of his versatility in the league, but he's faster. Mm-hmm. And he's rangier. So I was actually at the game, the semifinal game in Arizona, Ohio State Clemson, and I had a good angle down one of the sidelines, and I saw the pick happen down the right sideline that Fields threw to him. He came from the hash on a hole shot down the sideline. In cover 2 and made a play on the sideline on what's going to be an NFL quarterback and an NFL receiver in one of the biggest games of the year. And I know they didn't win the championship, but But I think we're going to look back and go, man, someone missed on him. Wherever it is. Even if he goes 5, people missed on him.
And the reason I was surprised wasn't because I don't agree with you that he's a freak. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. He's my number 2 player, so I'm not super shocked. I saw that same thing. His versatility is otherworldly. There have been some people who, and I think Jamar will be happy to hear this, some people have mocked him to the Chargers and saying that him and Derwin James on the same field.
Well, they're very similar. I think he's just maybe a plus version of Derwin James at his best.
Exactly. So, I mean, the 2 chess pieces there would be absolutely ridiculous. But for me, I think the best player is Chase Young. I think that Isaiah Simmons has the ability to be a Hall of Fame, gold jacket player. But the thing is that he could get messed up by some stupid defensive coordinator who's like, I don't know where to put this guy. I'm gonna sit here and stack
3-4.
Yeah, I don't know what it like. There's gonna be some dumb defensive coordinators out there, and not dumb as in like I'm smarter than them, but dumb as far as compared to other defensive coordinators that are not going to know what to do with his versatility and pigeonhole him somewhere, and he's not going to be able to flourish. That is a definite possibility. Chase Young, I don't think that you can put him anywhere out unless you're going to put him in the secondary.
But what if they pull? Remember the Texans a few years ago said, "Clowney, you're an outside linebacker."
But that's the thing. Chase Young has the ability to move, and I think his hips are better than Clowney's. If they tried to do that, I think that he could do that better than Clowney. His hands are good enough. If you wanted to move him in a 3-tech, it would be dumb. But if his hands are good enough, then he could play 3-tech.
I'm not saying that he should, but that would be something that dumb that they could do.
Of course. But I think the point being is that playing Isaiah Simmons as a stack linebacker in a 3-4 or playing Chase Young out of position as an edge rusher in a 3-4, I think Chase Young would still be a better player. If you played Chase Young as a 3-tech in a 4-3, I think he would still be a better player. So again, Simmons is my number 2 player, but I think that was the difference for me is that Chase Young, you can't F it up as much with him than you could with Isaiah Simmons.
He's a one-place guy.
Yeah. So, Jamar, you have any big time ideas on players coming out this year?
Nothing big time or out of the norm.
Any draft steals? I got a couple. So I think Amik Robinson, a corner out of Louisiana Tech. There have been a couple of people who have talked about him. He's 5'8", 187. He's not, super physically imposing, but I've seen a lot of corners make a lot of hay in this league. And one of the big things is of course you need to cover. That's the first. But if you're taking out the 100% assumption that you need to be able to cover to play that position, you need to be competitive and you need to be able to grind and be able to tackle. There are plenty of guys that are in this league that can cover with the best of them, but outside of running with the player, they're dead on rundowns. So Amik Robinson is a guy who can tackle. He is ultra competitive. He's a guy who's going to be able to be a strong player in the locker room. I think another player is Michael Pittman Jr. from USC. He's a guy who plays punt coverage. He's a guy who I think Daniel Jeremiah had a sit down with him and he was impressed enough that he was talking about his punt block against one of the teams instead of his receiver stats. And then when you look at his receiving stats, he had over 1,000 yards. I think he had about 12 touchdowns. He can make plays on the perimeter. A high character guy. When you're looking at those type of steal players. You're looking at guys who can find ways to make plays outside of just the one trick pony, who can affect your team in multiple ways. So those are a couple. I also think Bryce Hall, the cornerback out of Virginia, ultra competitive, a guy who was injured in 2019 for the most of the season. A guy who can come down and tackle, a guy who can play and make plays on the perimeter. And the last one is Antoine Winfield Jr. That dude is ridiculous. That dude is ridiculous. Like, when it comes down to making plays, like, I comped him as Earl Thomas. Making plays on the ball, coming down, making tackles. He might be short, but it doesn't matter. He can do anything that you need him to do. If you want a box safety, if you want a guy who's just going to play in a line of scrimmage, that's probably not the best thing for him, but he can do that if you want him to. But if you want a guy who's going to play free for you, like traditional free, your center fielder guy, that guy, he's going to wreck games. So I'm really excited to see all three of those players play.
So you might know where I'm going with this. One of my favorite players just to watch last year in college football. I think he's going to fall down the draft board for some other reason. I had to find it in here.
I know.
I had to find it in here. Projected 5th round pick, Lynn Bowden Jr., Kentucky. So he played some running back. He actually is probably going to end up being a receiver in the league, but he ended up playing quarterback for Kentucky. And if you want to watch some legit highlights, watch him just be a running quarterback just for fun. Like, they just took and said, "Hey, just run the ball." He ripped off a 300-yard game against someone in the SEC, I think. I think he's going to fall down the draft board. He is only a 4.46 guy, but with the ball in his hand, he does a lot of good stuff. He can play in the return game, and I think that even if he pops up into the 4th round, you're going to get a good professional receiver and playmaker with that pick.
Yeah. And
then another one, he got a lot of run after the Senior Bowl. Harrison Bryant, 3rd round grade. Probably going to jump up a little more than that. May not be a Kelsey type, a big-time playmaker, but he's going to be very good for a long time. He has the blocking skills to take advantage at that position. But, you actually look at that 65 receptions, 1,000 yards last year, led tight ends in the nation in both. It is Florida Atlantic, but that is one thing that he proved at the Senior Bowl is he could play with the big guys.
Right.
And I think he did a really good job in being able to play in the slot as a tight end in line, which some guys are not willing to do, Jimmy Graham. And he could play in the backfield. They're playing some H-back stuff with him. I think he's going to be a nice pick, and he's gonna outperform his draft position.
Right. Got any?
No.
All right. Let's go ahead and our second to last question. This is a take on First Take, and I just about lost my mind. But they were debating, is Carson Wentz better than Aaron Rodgers? And I didn't really know what to say. I still don't know what to say. I don't know why that was even a segment, but
because there's no sports on right now.
Yeah, they just gotta make stuff up, right?
So, just start it off. Are we looking at like current career and current like current stats, or like based on stats that have happened? Carson Wentz obviously very injury prone person.
Right, and he just hasn't played enough football to compare to a career of a guy we just talked about being an all-decade team.
Right.
Yeah. Like if you just took Carson Wentz's stats and got rid of the fact that he got hurt every single year, you could make the argument. But the dude still gets hurt, doesn't finish a season. Like there's no chance he's coming close to an all-decade team.
Right.
So like if we're looking at the way that their seasons have played out, you can't make the argument. If you look at the way that they have played in the games that they have played, okay, I can kind of see it.
The way I would answer the question after like blowing off some steam, because I let off a lot of expletives in our group text when I very first saw this, but the way that I would characterize it is, so my best analogy is if you had a bunch of 8th graders on your team and the other person also had the same, who would perform better? Now, I think that Carson Wentz gets a lot of credit for, the less is more. He down the stretch last season was able to carry his team, drug them kicking and screaming to the playoffs, and was playing really great football. But I've seen Aaron Rodgers with no O-line and no running game to speak of and no defense to speak of win MVPs. So when it comes down to it, like if I'm saying this year, if both teams play with 8th graders, I think that Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback. If we're talking about next year, I think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback. If we're talking about 5 years from now, then I think Carson Wentz is going to be better. Clearly, the age comes into it, but like I don't see even Carson Wentz's best trait, like improvisation, keeping his eyes down the field, avoiding people, making plays. Aaron Rodgers is better than him even at that. Like outside of running past the line of scrimmage, in the one thing he's better than him at, he gets hurt doing it. So like I mean, when you look at every single thing that they do, Aaron Rodgers is better, and rightfully so, because he's a more experienced player. Like clearly, like it's not fair to put that on someone and be like, why aren't you better than this seasoned veteran? Like you said, someone on the all-decade team. But like when they put it up on First Take, like they were arguing as if like it was a foregone conclusion that Carson Wentz was better. I was like, he can't even prove that he can stay healthy. Like he has an asterisk next to his Super Bowl. He didn't play in that one, guys. Right. Like he's 0-0. He has the same amount of Super Bowl wins as me. Right. So,
but so with all this going on, we're hanging out with Jamar last weekend. We watched that Super Bowl game. Mm-hmm. Both those teams were stacked.
Yes,
they were very good.
Yes,
and that defense that he had was
good that year. Like, it was amazing.
The Clay Matthews, AJ Hawk, Charles Woodson. Mm-hmm. That was a very good defense.
Yes, that was a great defense.
So to like that was his MVP. I think that PJ Rogers. That was his MVP season, or one of them. So like you couldn't compare, careers at this point, and like you can't until the end of them. But so like the argument would end up becoming, is he better for one season? Which I think we would all agree. He can't be. He's not reliable enough to be healthy at the end of the year.
Right.
Has he done a great job carrying some bums to playoff games? Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes.
But you don't play in the playoff games, so it's hard to like continue to evaluate.
Right.
And Aaron Rodgers at least has been there.
Right.
Then for one game, I think is maybe where you would have the best argument. One game with the same team, right?
Who's your backup quarterback, though?
No, just one game.
Because if you get hurt in the third
he doesn't
quarter,
get hurt every game though. He just gets hurt and misses some time. But like they're very similar in how they play, mm-hmm. right? They don't stay on schedule all the time,
right?
Right. Carson and Aaron both, they want to do extra stuff that they don't have to.
Yeah,
Carson has taken some unnecessary hits,
mm-hmm.
and if he just doesn't do that, I mean, he should be okay.
Right.
But, like, that's where the only argument could take place, right? For one game with the same team, who would you take?
Yeah.
And, like, I could see the argument for both, mm-hmm. right? Carson has, in games like that he's played in, he has been very good.
Right.
And not to say that Rodgers hasn't, but that's where his best argument would be.
Right.
And, like, I'm a big Carson Wentz fan. I think he's really good. I told you before we start all this, when the draft was here, I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think he is.
Yep, you did.
But like if you can't be healthy when it matters, then it doesn't matter. Like if you get overtime and you get hurt, like doesn't matter anyways, right?
Right.
So, but if it's going to be an argument, it's going to have to be a one-game argument at this point. Until he proves that he can take his team into the playoffs and be there with them.
Right. Before we move to our last one, I want to go back to our draft steals. Jalen Hurts. Hey, that's my dude. I can't leave Jalen Hurts off there. If team gets him, he's a great guy in the locker room. He can definitely make plays.
Like, if you're going to actually steal that, if he's in second round, is that a steal? Like third, fourth round, and he plays well, that's a steal for sure.
I think late second round. Okay. I think it depends on how many quarterbacks go ahead of him, regardless. So like if you take him in the second round, and you've seen Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Love, and then either Eason or Fromm or both off the board before him. So
you're number 7.
It doesn't matter if it's a second round. It's still a steal because he's better than Fromm and he's better than Eason. And I would take him ahead of Jordan Love if I was doing it.
Me too.
And I would probably still take Herbert ahead of him because of the offensive flexibility. It was the same argument I just made for Chase Young. I think that things have to fall very much in line for Jalen Hurts, but if I was one of the teams that was going to commit to running the football and commit to having a running quarterback, I would take Jalen Hurts even over Justin Herbert. So I think it depends on how many players go ahead of him.
Right.
Question for you.
Jamar's not a fan. Herbert's his boy.
I'm taking Herbert over Jalen Hurts.
Well, what's Herbert got, bro? What's Herbert's deal?
Hey, bro, I don't know.
He's not Tua.
He's not Tua. Right, Jalen Hurts is dope. I like Jalen Hurts. But just knowing the Chargers and how, obviously I'm just talking about the Chargers and how they run their offenses. I think Herbert's a better fit than Jalen Hurts. But that's just it.
So, from myself, who doesn't really watch much college football, I mean, Jalen Hurts was in Alabama, then Tua won the job, right?
Yeah.
But did Jalen get hurt, or what? What caused him to win the job?
So what actually happened was they brought Tua. Well, so Jalen Hurts, freshman year, SEC Player of the Year.
Yeah.
It was very good. They brought him back, but they had Tua coming in, and I think that they liked Tua more. But he couldn't take the job from him, right? So Jalen was just
he was playing great football.
Yeah, you got the returning player of the year, the teams behind, and they were just winning. They hadn't lost a game while he was there.
Right.
So then he struggles in the national championship. They turn it over 2-2 at halftime. He plays well, and I think that was for them their chance to just do it.
That was the excuse they were looking for.
Right, and then so Jalen stayed around for his junior year, saved them in the semifinal game to get them to the final, and then he's like, okay, I gotta go. But they didn't play the same. When they called offense for Tua, it was different for when they called it for Jalen Hurts. They wanted to be a run-based team, and like Tua came in like you could see the flip. It was like, we're throwing this every time, and maybe they didn't trust him as a passer. But I don't think they were treated the same either.
So is that where the downside is? Because to me, like, I still just remember Jalen as the Alabama quarterback. I didn't really watch him at Oklahoma last year. Like, I just don't get, how he dropped so far down. And I'm sure you guys covered it in your mini pod. But like, how is he getting shit on so bad right now?
So I think one of the things that gets overlooked is that players progress at different rates, and like Kyle mentioned, is that they wanted different game plans with Jalen Hurts versus Tua. I think they Alabama with A.J. McCarron and the people before him had always been a run-centric offense, play hard defense. Even when they had Julio Jones, even when they had Calvin Ridley, they had a myriad of offensive weapons, and they always were run-centric. And they finally got to a point where they had a quarterback in Tua, and they have like 5 6 potential, second or higher round receivers on their roster to where they were like, oh, let's finally open it up. Jalen Hurts wasn't the player that he is now his sophomore year in college. So when Tua came in, who played at a spread offense or more spread principle offense in high school and was a player who was further along as a passer, that was somebody that they picked up like, oh, we want this guy to be our dude. So when Jalen Hurts starts to falter and then Tua comes in that national championship games and gives them that spark, that propelled them. They said they were having a quarterback competition. It wasn't a competition. In the spring, they talked about that whole thing, but it was Tua's job. Like they wanted to make that move. And then Jalen Hurts did the honorable thing. He stayed. He was a good soldier. He backed him up. He did all the things that he needed to do. And when Tua got hurt and he had to win that game against Georgia, Jalen Hurts came in there and he lit things up and brought them back so that way they can win the game. All he needed to do at that point was show that he could still, play. And now he goes to Alabama or to Oklahoma and he does all the same stuff that Tua just did. He just did all the same. He did the exact same thing. He rushed for 20 touchdowns. He had 30 passing touchdowns. He did all the same stuff. So if they would have just stuck with him and let's say Tua wasn't a thing, if, he got hurt and he never was able to, regain his presence as a starting quarterback, we would have saw this from Jalen Hurts at Alabama. And then, to be honest, I don't think it would have changed his projection at all. I think that people have the idea when you're a run-first quarterback that you're not going to be successful. And so they kind of overlook some stuff. And I think Tua just has, the same way Herbert does, some traits that feel NFL-ish. Like they're going to fit in more systems than what Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has about 5 teams or 5 systems that he can go to be a Pro Bowl or better quarterback. Like Tua could probably go to like 20 teams that would make him a Pro Bowl level quarterback, and you have to take that into consideration when you're drafting. So I don't really think that there was any different path that he could have taken, but I'm glad he was able to go to Oklahoma and show, that he could move the ball down the field and make plays and everything like that. So, our last one before we head out is a long pod, but it was good content. Jamar, we'll start with you. Your life is on the line. Gun to your head.
I was not prepared.
Gun to your head. You got the ball on the 1 yard line. So you're a running play. You giving the ball to Mike Allstot. Oh, Mike Allstot, Jerome Bettis, or Marshawn Lynch. You giving it to beast mode?
I didn't even know the options. I didn't even know the options. I feel like I have to say beast mode.
Yeah. You're pot committed. Give us your take.
No, Jerome Bettis was in the lineup.
You trying to switch it up?
Nah, I'm not gonna switch it up. I'm gonna stick with beast.
All right, give us your take, bro. Why Marshawn?
Because that one. Oh, I almost.
Kyle already did. Explicit tag is already up.
You just bleep it.
Just because that dude has heart, man. He has that drive, and Buzz does too. I mean, they all do. So it's kind of really hard to pick one. Just based off of, what I've seen recently. Like I haven't watched Jerome Bettis play in so long. But out of the 3. I would just have to go Beast.
Is there any other person you would throw in there over those 3?
LaDainian.
That's a good one. Jump over the top. Can't stop that man.
Speaking of jump over the top, Cam Newton.
That was my second one. I was gonna go
from the gun, catch it over the top.
Yeah,
I'm out with that.
Yeah. Gun to my head. I was gonna go out of the 3 options. I was gonna go Marshawn. And it's tough because both of those dudes were, 240 plus strong and it depends too. Are we going like at what point in their career too? Because Mike Allstott was literally unstoppable for 1 year.
I am taking Mike Allstott all day. I was waiting my turn, but That dude, I don't know why, but I was like, I mean, Brad Johnson was the Vikings backup quarterback, went to Tampa, so I kind of like jumped on the Brad Johnson train, and then I fell in love with their freaking kicker. What was his name?
Oh,
Martin
Gramatica. I fell in love with Martin Gramatica, and that jumped me onto the Tampa Bay train, and then Mike Allstot was there, and I was like, if the gun was to my head, I think I'd have to go Marshawn of those three. But like, Mike
you're probably
Allstot
not
is
going
like
to be wrong.
the really, really, really close second because I just love that dude.
Chances are all three of them are falling in, so you're gonna survive regardless. But
I like the LT call.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with Cam, catching that thing with everyone in front of him and just falling forward.
that was a good one. So how about this underdog?
How about Darren Sproles? Exactly.
So,
Next.
So underdog of the year. Drum roll. Tom Brady.
Oh, QB Sneak Master.
QB Sneak Master. He's like on conversions from 1 yard out. He's like 98% or 99% or something like that for his career. Like
Yeah.
I know that's a cheap cop out, but like hand sanitizer has 99%. So like that's pretty close. I'll take Tommy. So I mean, there you have it. It was a long episode, but it was nice and fun to get in here and talk some stuff about some of these topics that some of the listeners had. So hopefully we can continue to do this. It would be really cool in the future to be able to do something like this and just do it live, via Zoom or Facebook Live or something like that. So that way that person can come in and actually like debate us. That would be a lot of fun. So, we're going to come up with a mock draft next week. We're going to do some research. I think it'll be really cool engagement, see what teams people are rooting for. And then we'll do a mock draft episode, and then we'll do comparison and contrast for next week. So until that time, this is Dante.
Tony.
Kyle.
Jamar over at his own spot. Quarantine life. He's healthy. He's just staying at home today. All right, guys. Until next time, we're out.